Hello and welcome to Doof Game Club, Doof Media's exploration of the joy of play. I'm Ruben Morehouse,
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
and we are here to talk about Dark Souls. Elliot, we had a lot of difficulty figuring out how we were going to start talking about this, I think.
Mm. This is one of the weirdest game clubs in it. I think I have what I feel like is the most to say and no idea where to start.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
usually it was quite easy to say, oh, and I want to make this point and that will be a slide, and I want to make this point and that will be a slide. For this one, I just kind of had a fuck off big essay and no idea where to start.
yeah, I'm with you. It feels very much like, yeah, just like how do we even know what to talk about? And it's also interlinked. Like I think a good thing to say about Dark Souls initially is the core design philosophy of Dark Souls that it's built around runs through every element of it, meaning that it's hard for us to just isolate, oh, let's talk about this
Yeah.
without having to dive into this one major overarching point, which is, does Dark Souls hate its players? And what do we think of that? Basically, is the core question, right? Um,
Yeah.
it's hard for everything to not just come back to that question.
Yeah. But yeah, so obviously I've got the logo for Dark Souls Pure on the screen right now, but we are talking pretty much exclusively about the remaster, which I think changed some things, but not many. Uh,
Yeah, we should touch on that. Yeah, so I mean, there was an 8-year difference between the remaster and the original game, which is a long time. But we are going to be talking about the game like without based on our experiences of playing it, which means one, there's some bugs fixed that are good, but two, like I imagine the game in the first month or even maybe even year of its release felt very different to play to how it does now when pretty much everything about the game is known, I would
oh yeah,
assume, right?
I don't think I could ever play one of these games on release. Like
Yes.
I'm just not that sort of player.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that a bit more for some of our stuff we're talking about. But yeah, we're talking about it, playing it 10 years after, and that's actually kind of important to some of the points I want to make at least.
Yeah, in fact, I want to like open with a disclaimer that was sort of established on Media MD back when we did that, but some Game Club people may not be familiar with it, which is I don't tend to put a lot of weight in my own analysis in like historical value.
Yes.
So what I would mean by that is like, so I look at Zelda 1 as an example. I love the Zelda series, but Zelda 1 is a game I would describe it as bad because it hasn't aged well.
Yeah.
Um, that is separate from like acknowledging the influence it's had. Like Zelda 1 has obviously impacted a lot of the current gaming community directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
Um, and wait, I put those ideas in separate buckets. Like I can appreciate what it did when it came out, but I can also look at it now and say it's 2020 now. This game isn't fun to play anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are talking about how does it feel to play Dark Souls nowadays? And I mean, we'll probably in our discussion touch on, what do we think was intended here
Mm.
versus how does it feel now and how does it stack up to modern things now? I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit, but
Yeah, like I feel like some Hollow Knight comparisons will come up. I think Hollow Knight was very explicitly a game that drew from some of the ideas Dark Souls threw out into the public consciousness.
yeah.
Um, and I guess I just want to sort of think about that because if there's ever a bit of like Seinfeld isn't funny syndrome going on here, like
Yeah.
that way, I think that probably will come up. Like I think having played games like Hollow Knight first, it's sort of like sometimes it's like, oh, we've seen the more refined version of what Dark Souls, you know, first tried out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm sure that will come up as well. All right, now we've got all our disclaimers out of the way. Let's ask the core question, Elliot. Did you like Dark Souls?
I don't. I either love it or I hate it, and I
Mm,
don't. I honestly couldn't tell you. I honestly don't know if I like this game or not. I love some parts of it. I hate other parts. I feel confused about Dark Souls. Is how I feel. What about yourself?
yes. Um, yeah, similarly. I mean, I no, I'll even go more strongly and say yes, I did love it. I really didn't think I would. I had a lot of negative feelings about the game as I went in, and I think a lot of that comes to, I mean, the start of the game is just abrasive, right?
Yeah.
Especially I was playing on the Prepare to Die edition, which is a pretty bad port for PC, which was when I first tried to play the game, the latest version that was out, right? And I just remember it being a miserable time to the extent that I finished the Asylum, got in the bird's claws, and was just like, I don't think I want to keep playing this game, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that was basically my experience. And I never really bothered with it again after that. Started the game again, obviously for the game club. Tried it on the Prepare to Die edition. Was like, oh my god, this is going to be horrible. And then people were like, okay, swap to this edition and use a controller. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll do that. And then I found myself loving the game.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't think Dark Souls should get a pass for one of its version for it being a fun game if you manage to luck into having a community that can tell you how you should interact with it. But you
Yeah.
know, I was able to enjoy the game once I had that, which is good, I guess. It's worth hitting a beat that is a major downside to Dark Souls is it's really not a game that is designed to be accessible by design,
Yeah.
right? And that just means that it excludes you if you don't have, you know, so obviously it excludes you if you have certain disabilities, but also if you don't just have a community behind you saying, hey, you should play the game like this. Elliot, you and I would not have enjoyed this game, right? And that's just the.
There is a 0% chance I would have made it past the Asylum
Yeah.
without the community. Like people like Dawn, Prof, Bishop, like tuning in fairly regularly to actually tell me what to do was vital.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but we'll touch on some of this stuff as we go. I think I want to do a little bit of a teaser on what we can expect later on. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things in this episode. I just let's try this out. It's a little teaser, all right?
Okay.
So we're going to be talking about more about the obtuseness of the game, the narrative of the game. I've got some fun stats about how many times I died. So we're going to play a little guessing game about that. We'll have a lot of the guessing game I've got lined up for you, Elliot. And then we're going to do a special announcement about a special bonus thing. So stay tuned for all kinds of fun discussion this episode.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So I'm just reading the chat. I like Kaz Subalu's point about they never would have got into Dark Souls if people hadn't been explaining how to like cheese the game. Because I definitely think there's a weird difficulty curve in this game, or at least for me, the first third was far and away the hardest part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think by the time I got past the first half of Sen's Fortress, like 90% of the difficulty was done.
Mm.
I do also think that I've had both you and Dawn constantly tell me how much fun the game is, but you both got Black Knight swords. And
yeah, I mean, that's something to talk about as well, right? I like. We'll talk about the weapons and the balance of the weapons, I guess, as a point. But God, it's atrocious, genuinely atrociously bad.
See, Kasubal is saying if you can get past O and S, then you can do the rest. I did not find them anywhere near. The hardest boss in this game for me was almost certainly Quelaag, the like Spider Woman.
One of the bosses I beat first try, not even a single death. And we'll get to this once we get to the stats. But yeah, God, the bosses are really just not the hard part of this game, are they?
They were for me at the start.
Sure, yes, that's fair. Should we talk about what should we talk about first? We were kind of circling around stuff. I don't know.
Actually, last thing I want to touch on this side is I just wanted to give my 2-word summary on Dark Souls, which sounds harsher than I think I mean it, although I'm not sure. If I had to describe this game in 2 words, it would be obtuse and inconsistent. And I think obtuse we're going to talk about like a lot as we go through, but I do just want to say there's an inconsistency throughout this game that I kind of love, but also hate. Like, so there's some really interesting stuff in the combat where you get like really accurate hitboxes, right? But then also like you just get invincibility frames where you can like roll through stuff, or like when you backstab someone, nobody else can hurt you. Like I don't know. Is it just me, or is it kind of weird where there's this like immersion breaking thing where like somebody can hit me with a weapon through the wall, but also in general the colliders are very accurate.
Yeah, I think again it's coming down to this idea of like the the obtuseness of it, right? Because there's a system in the game that I didn't know about until someone explained it to me. I think it was Dawn, might have been maybe John Alith or someone, I don't know, called Poise.
Yeah.
And Poise is a system where it allows you to not get like staggered from attacks.
Hmm.
Never explained in the game that I saw, and I did a fair amount of reading of stuff. Never explained in the game, and it just meant that when invaders would come to me, I'd be able to attack them, and they would just brute force through it and kill me. And if they attacked me, I'd get staggered. And I was just like, well, this is just shit. Like, it just is a bad experience, right? Because of an obtuse and inconsistent system. Like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, although like Poise is consistent once you want. Like I just factor that into obtuse. I guess what I mean is like, and this is maybe just a thing with the age of the game, but like there's so much weight put onto the just the raw animations. Like if you compare it to say a more modern game, like I played a bit of Bloodborne, and it fixed this, and Zelda Breath of the Wild is very good about it too. It's like, if you're in the middle of doing an animation and an enemy hits you, it like breaks the animation and you get that like, like animation and physics blending. And you don't get that in Dark Souls. So I just find it a bit like weird how it's like, sometimes it's very realistic, and then other times a dragon can breathe fire on me, but it doesn't hurt me because I'm stabbing like a meaningless dude in the back.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. It can be hard to keep track of what the game is actually doing sometimes, huh?
Yeah. And also just boss design, massively inconsistent. There's some great bosses in this game, but oh boy, there's some garbage.
Yeah, who was your favorite boss, Elliot? I want us to intentionally seed some positivity in here.
No, easily the Manus in the DLC. Like the big guy with the hand.
Yes. Yeah, he was fun, wasn't he? There are a few fun bosses.
The DLC was honestly like pretty like consistently some of the best ones.
Yeah, the DLC I think was the best part of the game by a solid amount.
But yeah, I definitely enjoyed Manus. I think he had a really good variety of attacks. I got to summon a dog that got the shit beat out of it.
Yeah,
like
not a super helpful dog, but it's fun to have it.
What about yourself?
So Manus was fun. The boss that you fight in the DLC called Artorias is also, I thought, quite fun. More of just a swordsman, but I found them really fun.
Yeah, I think that was something this game did well. I think a lot of games fall into the trap of assuming like better bosses need to be bigger. Whereas sometimes the coolest bosses, like Artorias, did feel quite different because it was just a dude with a sword who'd come at you quickly.
Yeah, I also found myself really enjoying the Iron Giant. The one at the end of Sens. I thought it was quite fun. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, I do. That one just like took one stab at me and then took a rest, and I managed to kill it before it got back up. Like it was a nothing fight for me.
Yeah, it wasn't a difficult boss. I think I died to it once because it hit me and it knocked me into a place where, not off the edge, like among some rocks. So this is the one death in my list of deaths that I've got on my death list. My one death that I've marked as glitch, because it knocked me into an area that was like I was surrounded by rocks and I couldn't get out. Like I couldn't move. I was just stuck, and it was really frustrating. It was a really frustrating death. But yeah, I found that boss was actually quite fun to like avoid its big hits and stuff. Anyway, yeah.
Okay. Cool. So moving on to our next slide, let's talk about the level / world design. This is a bit of a weird video I've got for this one. I found some dude who made a level viewer. So we'll see how this works. But I mean, just to kick it off, I think the world design in the first half of this game, at least, is truly phenomenal. This might be one of my favorite, like Metroidvania style maps I've ever played. Right up there with Metroid Prime 1. The amount of times like I would just walk through a door or like open something and just I'd be like, oh cool,
oh shit, I'm here. Yeah.
It was like that's what you want in a Metroidvania, and it had a very good ratio of those.
Yeah, no, the fact that the world was so interconnected the entire time was a joyous affair for sure. Like, well, I mean, I guess up until you get to Anor Londo, where that kind of falls away. But um, yeah, it really was so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it's like after Sen's Fortress, the game kind of pivots to being like branches coming out of the central web.
Yes.
Um, and like, yeah, it's interesting because like I remember Hollow Knight did something quite similar, where you reach that point about halfway through Hollow Knight, and then there were three big bosses you had to go and defeat.
Mm, yes.
And I would argue Hollow
Collect
Knight.
their lord souls, so to speak.
um, I think Hollow Knight did a cooler thing with it, if I'm being honest, because
Mm,
I remember something we complimented Hollow Knight on doing here was each one of those three like Lord Souls that you had to go and get in Hollow Knight had like a very distinct element of the game that they focused on
yes.
as you went for them. So one was very platforming focused, one was combat focused. I can't remember what the other one was, but it was like it didn't matter as much what order you did them in because each one had a different focus. Whereas like with Dark Souls, I think I ran into the problem with the last two were just dead easy because if you can do all four, it's like, you know, by the time you get to the last two, you're over leveled.
Mm, mm, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think. Well, I guess kind of in a stronger RPG where you've got like levels, which Hollow Knight didn't have, right? Hollow Knight had upgrades that you got, but it wasn't like you're increasing your strength stat as you go.
Hmm.
Maybe it's easier to maintain that balance. But in Dark Souls, it definitely felt like I don't know. It felt rare to me that the game was like really well balanced. You know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd agree with that. There were definitely chunks of it for me where it felt like I was striking a really good difficulty level, but then other times it would just get shockingly hard for a bit, and then other times I just breeze through an area. Um, but I
Mm,
definitely felt it get easier in the second half of that like Lord Vessel segment of the game. Like after I'd done two of the four paths,
mm,
it was kind of like a cakewalk, especially because I did the DLC in the middle of that as well. Um, so yeah, like I don't know, like just thinking because there were some really cool bits. Like I actually liked. I think a few of them did some really cool stuff with changing up the gameplay. Like you get to is it Tomb of the Giants, the really dark place?
yeah, the dark area.
That was actually genuinely like if they made the Skull Lantern easier to find, um, a fantastic bit of like game design because by forcing me to not have a shield anymore and to like do the equivalent of raising my shield to see the light, it completely changed how I fought.
Mm,
And like that was actually just a fantastic area for me. It's really stuck out in my mind because it was like, oh, cool. I actually have to change how I'm playing.
mm.
And that's what you want from like the latter half of a game like this. I think you want something to take your fundamentals and challenge them.
Yeah, definitely. You want something that pushes you in more interesting ways, right?
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that's what the DLC really did well. Or maybe it wasn't even that. Maybe it was just the balance of the DLC felt better to me. I don't know what it was, but I really enjoyed the DLC was the only time I really felt like, oh, this game is like it's come into its own. It's really doing it for me. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's interesting. I would have had other points where I would have said that about it, but
I
yeah,
should specify. I'm talking like combat wise.
yeah.
Um,
I think
hmm,
yeah, I don't know. I definitely think there were times like so New Londo, the ghost town. That's a
yes.
place to me where I'm just like I don't see what it's adding to the game. Um, I like the boss because you're required to wear a ring, and that's a bit of a trial to figure out. But once you figure that out,
God, that was terrible. We'll talk
um,
about that later. Don't worry.
but once you've got the ring on, like this was great for me. Like again, this was something that forced me to change my playstyle because I'd been using Havel's ring the entire game
Yeah,
to keep myself
yeah,
alive, and I also had that ring that you can't take off that gives you like everything.
yeah.
Um, so suddenly I was challenged with like you can't wear Havel's ring anymore, and I was like, well, fuck, that's like I always have Havel's ring on.
Mm,
And it slowed me down. So I had to completely switch because I was like, now I couldn't support my current build. I had to completely change my build. I ended up deciding to go heavy for the first time in the game, so I put on all the heaviest shit I had.
Nice.
Um, and like then that sort of completely changed how I engaged with the rest of that area, and like set me up to do the later areas in different ways too.
Mm.
And so again, like the Lost Izalith kind of does this with the lava ring as well.
Yeah.
Like I ended up doing the same thing there. Lost Izalith just has other problems with the fact that it's boring and empty. Um,
Mm.
but like
The lava area specifically, I think, was pretty
yeah, there's just a
bland.
bunch of giant chicken butts.
I call
Um,
them T-Rex butts, but yeah,
yeah.
same diff.
And then the boss is the Bed of Chaos, which is like the worst boss in any game I've ever played.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I don't know. I guess I just look at these final four areas and I'm like, Tomb of the Giants is really cool. I think the idea of using the rings to force me to change my gameplay is really cool in some other areas. I thought the Duke's archives were just fascinating to visit, and it's such a shame that they decided to also include that goddamn crystal place.
Yeah, the crystal place was a mess, huh?
It it
Um,
it was like I don't know. That's just like that to me. I was just like, why? Who thought an invisible floor area was a good idea? Like this shit's been boring since Super Mario World. Like, why are we
yeah,
doing this?
yeah, yeah. Oh well. Yeah, that was really. I found that a really frustrating experience as well. God. Um,
So
I don't want to get.
yeah, no, I
I'm
don't
worried
want to
that we're
get up.
getting too into the negative weeds. You know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. To keep touching on the level design, I thought visually this game is phenomenal. Like in terms of using the color palette, like Hollow Knight was very similar. Like every area feels distinct. Like I'm
Mm,
pretty confident you could show me a screenshot of like almost any wall, and I could tell you roughly where it comes from. Because like every area has its own textures, its own color palette, its own lighting. Like it's very easy for me to just look at a screenshot and be like, oh, that's this area.
mm,
And considering most of it's just castles and dungeons, like that's quite impressive.
mm. Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. I think I was watching your playthrough of Bloodborne, and it was just so bland looking
Yeah, it
in
was very
comparison to
brown.
Dark Souls, where you're in the asylum and you're worried like, oh, is this just going to be all ruined buildings? But then you get to Filing Shrine, and its identity changes, and you have ruined buildings is, I'd say, a major theme, but you do have really visually distinct areas as well, which is nice.
One Firelink has bits of green in it. That's what Bloodborne was missing. Bloodborne was all brown
Yeah,
all the time. At
yeah.
least where I got to. I only got like an hour in. Um, but yeah, like, and I think this visual distinctiveness was a huge part of why I never felt like I had to make a map of Dark Souls.
Mm,
Like I made a checklist of places to go back to, but I never had to draw it out because I could always just tell myself, "Oh, that big cavern with, you know, the chandelier in it." And I instantly knew where that was.
yeah, yeah.
Um so I mean, you know, maybe a map would have been helpful if I ever got stuck, but I always had chat if I was like going up the wrong tree to just tell me to turn around.
Yeah, I don't think I had a map either. I kind of wrote down, I had like I wish I had it now on me. I had written down the names of each place and I drew like this joins to this joins to this, and circled the things I hadn't yet finished,
Mm.
basically. So I started building a map, but I found I never needed it. It was more just a list of here's what I still have left to do, like a
Yeah.
to-do list, right?
Yeah, that's what I kept. I only kept like go back and fight this dragon, go back and kill this thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like yeah, real testament to like the visuals. Also, well, talk about visuals. Ruining Anor Londo was absolutely a highlight of the game for me.
So I don't know what that means, Elliot.
Oh shit, I should have pulled out a clip of that. So you know the woman who's made out of boobs that gives you the
Yep,
the ward vessel.
I do. I
You
know who
can
you
shoot her
speak of.
with an arrow, and
Right.
Anor Londo like turns into one of the darkest, grimmest places in the game.
Oh, wait, why? What?
I don't know. Look, look, don't ask me about the story.
Well, Dawn explained that in. Okay, Dawn's saying she's an illusion. So,
Yeah,
okay, cool. I mean, whatever.
yeah.
What
No,
does
but
it turn into? I'm
the,
so
the
curious.
the point
I was
is,
gonna
yeah.
mm,
Let me find the clip like towards the end of this, and I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
But
please.
it's not like, because you know how that's like one of the few places in the game that's actually bright and looks like
Yes, that is not
non-ruinous.
ruined.
Yeah, that you
Yeah.
can completely undo that. It's great.
Oh, that's lame. No, it's cool. Cool.
Well, because then everyone
Um,
who's there, all the NPCs attack you for ruining their home. It was awesome.
didn't they already do that?
No, like there's the firekeeper lady.
Oh yeah.
Um, the other people who like kill the firekeeper. Like, yeah, it's like there's a bunch of up until then pleasant NPCs who are like, "How dare you?" And yeah,
Right. Huh.
it was
Yeah, I mean that would have been cool if I'd found that, but
I
it's
got
Dark
told.
Souls, so of course you only find about 5% of the stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I know this is dragging on, so I'll hurry up. But my last point, where we're coming to level and world design, and I know this will be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. Put the bonfires right in front of the boss. I don't think it's fun to have to run past enemies or fight them over and over again to get to the actual fight that matters.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, like walking past the same enemies or having to fight the same enemies time and time again. In what world is that fun? I get why it's like that. It's to make sure it's not just like too easy to keep fighting the boss.
Just
But
make the boss harder then, if that's your problem.
yeah,
Like for me, like the Capra Demon is my go-to example. I think I died maybe 10 times on my way to the Capra Demon.
man, this is funny, Elliot. Capra Demon, again, a boss I died 0 times
Well,
against.
no, so hear me out. I died 10 times getting to the Capra
Oh,
Demon,
sorry, yes.
beat it on my third go finding it. Both of the
Yeah,
first two I died within 5 seconds of getting into the room. So it was like
yeah,
the first time I actually got to fight the Capra Demon, I
yeah,
killed it.
yeah.
Um, but it took me 12 goes to actually have a decent attempt at fighting it because I kept getting killed by those poison like dickheads on the way.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a fair point that the designers of Dark Souls from software do conflate annoyance with difficulty a little bit too much.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with
Being annoyed is not the same as finding something difficult. Uh,
that. Yeah, they could be a bit more selective. Yeah. Okay, so Ruben, this one is
oh, yeah.
yours.
So, question, Elliot. Is Dark Souls a difficult game? I want to. Oh, wait. Is this my clip?
No, this looks like
Oh,
the
no,
one I'd
sorry.
put in there.
Yeah, sorry. I just got confused because I was expecting a different clip, but then I realized that's somewhere else. Um, I guess again, it comes down to annoyance is not the same as difficulty, right? Let's play a little game here. I've got a list of all my deaths, every single death, and I've written down where I died. I've categorized it as like environmental or a boss or just a random enemy, or some
Okay.
invaders, whatever. The question I want to ask you is, um, which uh, which one do you think got me the most
Oh,
of
easily
those?
environmental.
Interesting.
It's got
You are not
it,
correct. You're
it's got it.
close, but not correct.
Oh, really? Like,
Environmental was up there, but the answer was random enemy. The amount of times I died to just random enemies from just like, oh, suddenly there's four of them here that you didn't expect them to be four is a lot. So 22 times I died to just some random enemy. 18 times I died to environmental stuff.
okay.
The thing that killed me the most, I think, was an environmental thing. Hold on, let me look at my stats. Falling into a hole where an elevator used to be killed me a lot of times. Falling in the crystal caves, that was
Yeah,
tied for first.
that makes sense.
Falling off was a lot of stuff. I died a lot of times against the ceaseless discharge before I was meant to kill it. I was just trying to do it and it didn't work.
I
Died a
did
lot of
that.
times to the ghosts. That
Oh,
was a good
yep, yep.
one. Just random ghosts getting me. But yeah, so the amount of times I died to elevators in this game, like it's just annoying, right? Of my 64 deaths before the DLC, uh, only 17 of those were to bosses, and 5 of that is just batting my head against the ceaseless discharge before I was really supposed to. In fact, apart from the ceaseless discharge, I only died twice against any other boss before just beating it. So, and it's most of that is just the first time is just figuring out its patterns, right? It's not even. It's just like observing it and trying not to die.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like uh, the difficulty in this game is just not what it should be. The difficulty is, oh, you're just gonna suddenly die from some random thing. It's not. It's just. I hate it. I hate the difficulty of this game. It was either way too easy or it just randomly kills you from something completely stupid.
I really need to go and look at your streams just because I have a feel like the Black Knight sword made the first half of the game a lot easier for you.
Mm.
Because mine, like, I found the combat very punishing for the first up like Sen's Fortress was probably like the one that's on screen now would have been the last time that was the case for me. But like there were so many times before it because like I had swords that were doing like 30 damage a lot of the time, whereas I have a feeling your Black Knight sword was probably killing them in 1 or 2 hits.
I mean, yeah. I guess it's worth us kind of talking about the weapons in Dark Souls, but like, I found a weapon, the Black Knight sword, that I used for 75% of the game, and I found it in the very first area, and there were just no other weapons that were stronger than it. I mean, like,
yeah, no, it's apparently the
that's
best
just
weapon
stupid.
in the game.
But like, again, that's just stupid.
Yeah.
Like, why are there so many weapons in the game if I would just find the first one that is the strongest and use it the entire time? For what purpose do any other weapons exist?
To jump ahead a little bit in my notes, so I won't have to say this later. This game made me wish for the difficulty, the weapon breaking in Breath of the Wild. I wish this game had
Yeah.
weapons break more often and you couldn't repair them.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I think the moments you mentioned that were the parts where the game forced you to mix stuff up were, I agree, the best because it forced you to mix stuff up. Like, that just makes the game more fun.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like that was the problem. So I ended up kind of using the claymore for most of the game, like, and so the footage on here now is me trying to learn the claymore. And it was like changing weapons once or twice was so hard because I got so used to them, and I was just like, I think, yeah, I think they should have just like forced us to change them more, or just not drop the Black Knight sword for some players at like the start of their run because it just changes the game. Like, seriously, the first third of this game was far and away the combat was brutal for me, and I don't get the impression from talking to you that it was for you at all.
No, not really. Not at all. Up until the DLC. I just want to hit my one more thing about the deaths in this game because I went to all the effort of getting this chart. So
yeah, no,
total deaths 96, 64 in the main game, 32 in the DLC, which is just a niceness of the numbers there. Up until the DLC, I died more times against bosses in the DLC than I did in the main game, and there were only like 3 bosses or something. It's just Artorias and Manus, is that his name?
Yeah, and the big dragon.
And Calamite as well got me a few times. The 2 places I died the most, Elliot. One was the Crystal Caves. The other place I just kept dying. Do you know what it was? There's about about a 1 second gap point of the game where I died the most, and it's the bit where you're going from the elevator in Blighttown to the platforms. Just going from off of that big water wheel elevator onto the little platform next to it, I died 5 times there. That was the hardest enemy in the game, was that getting on and off that elevator. So
that is not a problem I ran into, but
just arbitrarily random stuff that just suddenly kills you. Good times.
Yeah, fair enough. I think for me it would just be trying to take shortcuts and rolling off the edge.
That's a classic. That's a classic. A classic enemy in Dark Souls is ledges.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. 64 deaths is including the death against Seath the Scaleless, which is a forced death, which I've marked down as forced death, but maybe shouldn't be counted.
Why would you? Yeah, I don't understand why you would include a forced death in your game.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, no, I get it. If your game isn't a game like Dark Souls where a forced death is death is kind of the whole point, right? Yeah, exactly. Forced death is fine if it's not like punished.
Yeah.
to the same extent. But if it is, then just like why? What? How is that fun? That's the summary of Dark Souls, I think, is wait, what? How is that fun?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a shame. Because I don't hate this game as much as I feel like I'm coming across like I do.
I know but just the
It's
I
so
had
much to
so much
whinge
fun
about.
with this game, but every so often it was just like, why is this like this?
I feel like half of the fun of this game is whinging about it, and so that's why it's going to come across as really negative here today.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this game, and I think it could have been a game that I would put down as like, oh shit, this is like one of my favorite games of all time. But for these shitty things, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. Anywho,
So, to move on to our next slide on the combat in this game.
mhm,
And the footage for this isn't super relevant. It's just footage of my favorite boss fight in the game.
yep.
I loved fighting these two.
Yeah, because fighting against one monster in this game is almost never a challenge because it's just kind of like you can just avoid
Well,
them and learn the patterns enough.
I
Fighting
think you're
against two,
I think
yeah,
you're better than me at it. I
okay,
think
sure.
also like again, like to look at Quelaag. If we look at Quelaag, isn't it? Because you said she was one of the easiest, didn't you?
Yes,
Whereas
she was to me a very easy boss.
I would think she is the boss that killed me the most. And it's
Oh,
because
interesting.
I did maybe 30 damage a hit. So
Right.
it took me like 100 hits to kill her, whereas like
Mm.
I'm imagining it took you a lot less.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly how many, but not too many. I remember I think I was down to like my penultimate Estus flask by the end. So it was the kind of fight where it's like doing damage, taking damage. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't a clean fight or whatever.
Yeah, it probably took me about 8 or 9 attempts to get her.
Mm. Mm. Um,
Yeah.
what do you think about the combat in this game? I really do. I think the enemies and the fact they all have like obvious tells and I mean not too obvious, but obvious enough that you can kind of be like, okay, they're doing this kind of attack.
Mm.
Like the animating in this game is probably the star of it, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I yeah, I haven't played too many games with bosses where I've had to worry about stuff like this. Hollow Knight was maybe one of the other ones. Like I feel like these games are making me better at fighting bosses.
Mm.
And it's because of yeah, because of stuff like that. Like there were a few that maybe like Manus, one of my favorites. He had like 3 different attacks that had very similar windups, and I think that was why
Yes.
I found him so fun because it was like this end game boss that kind of challenged a bit of the formula by making me pay even more attention to what windups he was doing.
Yeah. 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 Um, have you ever played any of the Monster Hunter games, Elliot?
I played like the first 2 hours of number 3.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder how you would feel, how you'd fare with those, because to me, that's the games that has gotten me used to being like able to fight and learn boss telegraph stuff. You know,
I
you're fighting
stopped
these giant
playing.
monsters that telegraph attacks.
So yeah, I stopped playing just because that game seemed to confuse long bosses with hard bosses. Like
Yes, it does do that, doesn't it?
Metroid Prime used to do this as well, but it's just like making a boss hard by meaning I can't make mistakes for 20 minutes isn't fun difficulty. That's just annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair
Like,
enough.
whereas I think Dark Souls had punishing but like quicker bosses relatively.
Yeah, they didn't feel like their health was way too inflated.
Yeah, exactly. Like the difficulty was in avoiding the attacks and not taking too many in a row, as opposed to like, yeah, Monster Hunter and Metroid Prime are like battles of attrition.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think the combat in this game, I actually really loved it. It was such a struggle at first. It was kind of overwhelming. It introduced so many things to me. Like there's 2 attacks for each hand. That was confusing for me. There's
Yep.
two-handing.
Yep.
There's like there were just so many
Parrying,
parts to it.
backstabs.
Yeah.
Did you? So I parried maybe once in the first hour of the game, and never until the very end of the game, where I killed the final boss with parrying. Were you parrying much?
I it came in waves. Sometimes I would parry a lot. Other times I wouldn't parry for like a couple of hours.
Mm,
I had to rely on it a bit more because without it, like, my parry would do half of enemy's health,
yeah.
whereas my raw
Yep.
attack would do like a tenth.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to rely on it. Otherwise, I was just going to be fighting them for 20 minutes. But I found parrying pretty hard to do, so I didn't do
Mm.
it too much.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Parrying. A weird mechanic that the game doesn't seem to actually want you to use that much.
I just wish they'd maybe introduce some of these things slower or in different way. Like two-handing was something that really took me ages to get my head around why it was beneficial.
Mm.
And there's like, it's because of the way the math works. There's certain niches where it is hugely beneficial, but like,
Mm.
um, yeah, I don't know. I was just overwhelmed by like I was constantly pushing the wrong buttons and stuff at the start because there were just so many options.
Yeah. 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 Too much stuff. Then there's like you can do like a kick which like drops an enemy
Yep.
shield. I don't think I ever used that. Like there's just too much stuff in this game, isn't there?
Again, I used it. I used it a few times, but yeah, like yeah, just I think by the end I'd sort of found my niche. But like the other thing to consider with the combat in this game is we we both did like swordsman builds. There's like sorcery and shit you can do as well. Like there's a whole massive part of this game that we just barely engaged with.
Well, so I was a pyromancer, so which meant I had a limited number of like high impact spells that I could deploy when I wanted to, which was
Mhm.
fun. But all the other, there were clearly so many more spells if you were like hardcore on the sorcery side, which I just didn't. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Seemed like they had cool stuff, but I just couldn't use most of them. And when I tried, it didn't really work.
Yeah. Like, I completely agree. I did a bit of pyromancy, but that was all I ever managed to figure out.
There was a spell I did where I could turn into a random object, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool." But I tried to use it, and enemies would just attack me anyway. So I was like, oh, "Okay, doesn't do anything, I guess."
It must be for
Great.
PvP.
But even then, like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I guess my one complaint about the combat in this game would be that it's slow.
Mm,
I spent the entire game with the shield that increases your stamina regeneration, just because without it, it was a game of waiting, not a game of doing, and I like games of doing.
mm,
Um, so I kind of
yeah,
needed that shield to actually have fun.
yeah, yeah. I had my shield the entire time, and it was a lot of like run around, put up my shield at just the right time. Otherwise, my stamina recharges too slowly, and I'm
Yeah,
gonna get my shield knocked out of me, and then I just have to run away for a bit, which is like boring.
yeah. Bloodborne, which so I played the first 2 hours of Bloodborne. Huge improvement in the combat for me. It was like all the best parts of Dark Souls combat, and it was way faster.
Right.
Dodging uses almost no stamina, so you're encouraged to
Nice.
dodge everywhere.
That's
Um,
fun. I would almost never dodge in Dark Souls because it's just too slow.
yeah, like it's yeah, Bloodborne was so much more fun combat wise for me, because it actually like was fast paced and dodge
Yeah.
based.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds fun. I have to try it. I mean, let's ask the question of what your opinion. What's your opinion of Souls-like games now? Would you, by choice, uh, go and play, Bloodborne or whatever the next one that comes out is?
I I've learned a lot about what parts I like and don't like of the Soulsborne genre, and I think
Hmm.
what's good about that is that like this is a very even From Software seems to completely alter the formula in a significant way every time they make a game, which is good because it means like I can't just rule out all the Dark Souls games as well as like all their other ones, but like Sekiro is one I really have my eye on. Based on what
Mm,
I've heard, it like takes most of my major complaints about Dark Souls and gets rid of them.
nice. Yeah.
Bloodborne was much better combat, but the level design had me tearing my beard out. Um, so I don't think I'm going to continue playing Bloodborne honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm interested in certain parts of this genre enough that like if people can make a case for a game having the bits that I like, I will play more of it.
Well, I mean, the thing about this game is like, it's very easy to see that it was incredibly competently made in a number of areas. They just made a bunch of decisions where you're like,
Yeah.
why'd you do this? This is just making the game worse.
It's all decisions too, as you said. Like
Yeah.
I there's only a few parts of this game where I just like say, oh, they actually did badly, like Lost Izalith and the Bed of Chaos. and the UI, I will point
The
out and say,
crystal area as well,
yeah,
I'd be like, that's just bad. But
yeah. Whereas there's like a lot of other things where it's just like, like the moving the bonfires closer to the bosses, like that's a choice that they made, and it's a choice I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm not going to like criticize it in the same way.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, so yeah,
Um,
are you going to play many more Soulsbornesies?
Probably. I really did enjoy Dark Souls a huge amount. Like, I finally got why some people would list this as their favorite game of all time now. A coworker of mine recently has been not blogging, but like posting about on the internal Slack about like all the Dark Souls runs he's doing. He's done like a run where he just has one specific weapon. He's done a run with like no armor and all this kind of shit. Like, and I'm like, I finally get why you would want to do this because there's so much to this game that you can get out of it, but it's so just not. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely didn't get it before. I probably will try, I don't know, Sekiro or Bloodborne or something at some point because I've been at least endeared that the developers of the game are competent, whereas I previously thought they were incompetent. And so I'd be interested to see the decisions that they make,
Yeah.
regardless of whether I think I would enjoy them or not, you know?
I'm very encouraged by the idea that they are willing to change up the formula in a lot of
Yes, me
ways
too.
as well. Like that, obviously I'm a huge Nintendo fan and they're the same. They're very they're almost insistent on not just remaking the same game but with new levels, with the exception of Mario. Um,
Yeah.
but
You know what? You know what I'll never play, Elliot, is Demon Souls. Based
oh
on
god, yeah.
what I've seen, it's clear that Demon Souls was the first attempt at this formula, and there are so many problems with it. Dark Souls is like an improvement and a improvement on a lot of the systems that were problematic in Demon Souls, and hopefully that just continues throughout the rest of the game. So I'm kind of like, yeah, sure, I'll go forward and keep trying them. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think at this point Sekiro is the only one I'd really look at.
Mm,
Personally, but yeah, I agree. The differences just mean it's worth looking into.
yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, yeah, this game is kind of experimental, right?
Yeah. Uh, sorry, I've just lost my place in the notes. Yes, sorry. Let's move on to the experimental slide.
I mean, I was going to make it a natural transition, but you can just hang a lantern on it. That works too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people referred to this game as experimental over the last 2 months, and I have to agree. I think this is what was apparently a fairly small team trying to do a lot, and I think maybe
Yeah.
my criticism of this would be that I think they were inconsistent about thinking or asking why they were doing a certain experiment.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I think they had a thing in mind of like, let's just try and do things. Let's just make a different decision to what other people have done,
Yeah,
right? And that was a guiding principle, and that's fine. And obviously led to a game that does a lot of really cool things, like rethinks a lot of really interesting systems. Um, but also comes with problems.
yeah. I think they didn't like. I agree. I love this design philosophy they had of let's break convention. I just think maybe they could have often sat down and asked themselves why they were breaking certain conventions.
Sorry, yes. John Lith has put it in a way that obviously we should have said, which is FromSoft devs were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should, which is 100% correct.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. I mean, and again, like I know I've already hated this, but like the bed of chaos to me is just this to a T. Oh, and the Crystal Caves, where
Yeah.
someone was just like, "Hey, what if we challenged convention by
Yeah,
having a
wouldn't it be
boss?"
cool if, yeah.
And then you
And
sort
the
of
answer is
see it
no.
in action, and you're like, "Oh no, that's terrible."
Yeah, no.
But they left
Fuck,
them
those
in.
crystal caves were atrocious.
Honestly, the weirdest thing about the Crystal Caves to me is you could take them out of the game and there's nothing lost, like because they don't connect to any other areas. Like
Yep.
just the Duke's archives were one of my favorite areas of the game, and you could have just had like the same boss in the roof of there, and it would have been great.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, like, really didn't need to be there, did it?
Whereas like to talk about some of the things I think they got right.
Mm.
I actually loved when just like enemies would jump out of nowhere. sometimes, like keeping on your toes. The chests that would eat you,
Yeah, mimics. Yeah,
um, that was fucking hilarious. The first time I got eaten by a chest, I was like, excuse me." Um,
yeah.
yeah, like some
Uh,
of those things, absolutely
I think
fantastic.
I think the reason I really like that is because orange soapstone's in the game, right? Like it because explicitly it sets up this vibe of like this is a really harsh and hostile world, but there's kind of an onus on the players to be working together to like make it not unfair in that way. Like
Yeah,
if I was just playing through this game when it first released, I would find that stuff so annoying because, and this is one of the things that I bounced off of the most when I first tried Dark Souls. There's a part where in the asylum you walk up some stairs and a skeleton pushes a boulder down at you and does damage to you. And it's a skeleton that, I mean, once you've seen it, you can kind of know it's there and stuff. But I don't think any normal player would be expected to think that that's going to happen, right? Um, and there are moments like that everywhere in Dark Souls, literally everywhere. But the fact that there's a probably about a 70% or 80% chance that there'll be an orange soapstone sign saying like, "Oh, be careful" or something, and as soon as you see a soapstone, you're like, "All right, I've got my guard up a bit now."
mhm.
Um, it just made it feel not like I'm fighting against a game that is designed to just shit on me for no reason, but it felt like there's an unfair world, but we as the players are like banding together to deal with it together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I want to talk more about the multiplayer like later on as well, but like
Yeah.
at this point, I loved that vibe. I think, yeah, like it's almost separate for me. Like I think the mimic chests would still work,
Yeah,
even
sure.
without it. Like there's a few things like that where they're sort of breaking convention. I do agree though that like a lot of the trappy things are fun because like the illusory walls as well. I think the community actually does strike a good vibe of balancing, helping you with also shitting on you with the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I would hate illusory walls, honestly, if there wasn't soapstones, but I love
Yes.
illusory walls because it means people can say, hey, there's an illusory wall here, even when there's not. And I think that's a really fun vibe, right?
Yeah,
But I absolutely hate the idea of just some random wall. And oftentimes it is just some random wall that looks completely
there's no clue. Yeah.
indistinguishable. Um, that is just, oh, it's actually got a bonfire behind it. That
Yeah.
happens like 3 times. And if you didn't have the soapstone, this game would be terrible.
Yeah. I think another convention that this game obviously defied and has become the most famous for defying and set off a whole genre for defying is hand holding.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, like again, I think maybe they swung the pendulum a bit too far the other way at times.
Hmm.
But there are definitely times where I really enjoyed that the game didn't explicitly tell me what to do. And I've seen games like Hollow Knight follow up on this in what I would say is a more balanced manner since.
Yes,
And so
for
I'm
sure.
glad Dark Souls sort of set that tone.
Yeah, I agree. I love the idea that you're you're in a hostile world fending for yourself, and sometimes there are things that are wrong with that. I mean, sometimes there are things like where it extends a bit into things like, um, let's say, misleading item descriptions or things that are just so obtuse. But more or less, it goes well.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Mm. I want to point out an example of a item description that I think is terrible, or a system that I think is terrible, which is
Oh, I know where this is going.
the Firekeeper's Soul.
Yep.
Right? I mean, it's an item that says this can be used to upgrade your Estus flask, and so of course you click use, right, and then and I thought it had worked because you do a little animation and stuff. I thought it had worked, and then someone, in chat, people like doing hands on their heads emojis or whatever, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I used it to improve my Estus flask. They're like, no, that's not how it works. You have to go to this one of three very specific NPCs that you haven't met yet and give it to them actually. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, thanks Dark Souls. Like, stupid.
I,
That's just bad.
I got lucky in that because I don't read any of the item descriptions, I didn't manage to fuck it up. Until I used I got the Firekeeper soul that just said it was the Firekeeper soul, and it was the one of the dead one at Firelink.
Yeah.
So I took that Firekeeper soul to the Firekeeper in Anor Londo, and was like, "Oh, upgrade my Estus," and then I'm going to go back and also revive the other one.
Mm.
And then it turns out you're actually meant to use a Firekeeper Soul for that. And I was like, "Oh, that's fine. I'll use it for the next one." They're like, "No, you can only use that one."
Yep. Good
It
times.
was like it didn't say that. It didn't say it anywhere.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea that was even a thing. Um, Again, just something that is not. I mean, like, here's the ostensibly the flow of events, right? I think you free somebody in the asylum, one of one of a million NPCs that just say 2 words to you and never appear again. Then this person is like sometimes can be seen near the firekeeper, like giggling menacingly or whatever. I never saw them in there, so
Okay.
that didn't show up for me. And then you go back to the Firelink Shrine and the Firekeeper's dead and you don't know why. That happens. And then later on you find an item that's like, oh, this can take you to the world of the person who killed the Firekeeper. I'm like, oh, okay, when it blinks. And later on it blinks and you go in and I'm like, oh, I don't recognize who this person is.
Yeah.
And then that was the chain of events. And it's something that's like, man, that could have been so cool if it at any point was better explained to me, but it just wasn't, and so therefore it was completely not a moment that landed for me at all. But man, it would have been such a cool one if I'd understood any of the steps in that chain,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. This was like even worse than Outer Wilds for me, with just like it felt like the game was punishing me for interacting with the NPCs, but then it wanted me to feel things when one of them died. Like
Yeah.
Solaire turned mad in the basement towards the end of the game for me, and I was like, "Oh, well, guess I'm gonna kill this annoying guy who just says praise the sun and doesn't help me."
See,
Like,
that worked on me for one reason, which is I had summoned him once to help me with the boss, which apparently is a mechanic that existed, but I only ever saw it one time. But yeah, like the thing about NPCs in Dark Souls is you talk to them, they say nothing of value. I talk to every single NPC, but I can't blame you for not doing that because literally no time when I talk to an NPC was it worth my while.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah.
Oh, except one. Sometimes they give. The reason I talk to them was sometimes they give you a gesture. That was literally the only reason I talk to any NPC. And you get gestures maybe 3 or 4 times from them, right?
Yeah, I had a couple who gave me that, but yeah, I agree. Like, and I kept getting told, "Oh, if you talk to them like 3 more times, they would have told you X, Y, Z." And it's like, why didn't they
Oh, yeah,
open with it?
great, thanks. Yeah, in what world is that good? No, you have to talk to this guy 30 times, and then he'll drop one tiny hint of lore that you can put together when you talk to every other NPC 30 times. That's not well designed. It's bad.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it bad, but I'd call it unintuitive
No,
and
I'm
boring.
willing to call it bad. A game teaches you how to interact with it, Elliot, and if you
Yeah.
have to talk to an NPC multiple times and then they suddenly say something different, that's just silly. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I just know that
Yeah.
a lot of people here don't. Um. Anyway, yeah. Yeah. I felt like the game was training me not to talk to NPCs, and then suddenly when it was like I was getting in trouble for not talking to NPCs, it was like, well, that's what you taught me to do. I learned it from you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, teach the game teaches you how to interact with it. What more can I say than that?
Yeah.
Most of the time when you talk to an NPC and they're important, they will either say 1 or 2 lines of dialogue and then immediately take you into a shop dialogue, which is signaling to you this character is a shop and you should remember where they are. Or you'll say 1 or 2 lines and they'll give you an item and that signals to you, okay, you've completed your transaction with this NPC. Or they'll just say blah 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 and then you're like, okay, cool, fine, see you next time, pal, or whatever, right?
Yeah. I think we should table this now because there's an example I want to use, but it's one of the later slide videos. So
Okay, cool.
Let's come
Let's
back
move
to
on.
this.
And I'm going to talk about another thing I really disliked about this game, which is the invading mechanic. All right? I want
Yeah,
to touch
that's
on
interesting.
this.
I actually quite liked it.
Oh, I loved the idea. I just think it was implemented so poorly.
Okay.
Because I don't think a single time I got invaded, it felt like it was a fair competition in any way, right? Every single time I got invaded, it was by somebody who just knew more about the game than I did and could therefore abuse the obtuse systems of this game in order to just kill me 100% reliably. There was one time where I got invaded by somebody and I was able to run away from them, like run away, throw a fireball, run away, throw a fireball, enough that I killed them. And then they just came back literally like 30 seconds later and killed me almost instantly. So like, not to mention other things like sometimes it was just laggy and I wouldn't be able to effectively fight them. But just genuinely, I love the idea, but it just did not work very well, I don't think. I never had a good experience with invading.
See, that's interesting because I actually managed to kill about probably 3/4 of my invaders.
Really?
But that's just because I think the lag helped me, and I was just able to backstab people really cheaply.
Nice.
Um, I don't know. I actually found it usually fun. I was at least getting invaded by people who were a fun fight, but maybe I just got very
Mm,
lucky.
mm.
There was one time I tried invading someone during the DLC, and I invaded this dude about 6 times, and I got absolutely wiped all six. It
Nice.
was like the opposite. I was the invader, and I was just a chump compared to this person I was invading. Um, so yeah, my experience more was the invading is bad rather than being invaded.
And maybe this is the flip side of the fact that we're playing this game, 10 years after its release, right? Is people who are still playing this game are probably going to be pretty good at it.
Yeah,
Maybe this is the case when you want to play a game early on. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I just had such a bad experience with invading every single time, except for one time I managed to have a fair fight, and then they just came back and killed me again. So like, whatever. Like, what
yeah.
what benefit is that to me?
No, you're right. Like I think I just got lucky with the people who were invading me, and that they were fun fights. There's no
Yeah,
guarantee that that's going to happen.
yeah.
I wonder how you fix that though.
Well, my suggestion is if you're invading somebody, they have to be of a higher level than you. I think that's a good baseline suggestion.
Yep.
As
Yep.
the instigator, you should be at a disadvantage, and I think the game doesn't do anything to enforce that, right?
Yeah. I also think some more like tangible rewards for the system might be more fun.
Mm,
Like obviously you get a shitload of souls or something, but I don't know. Well, like working it into the benefits, like if it gave like certain types of Titanite shards or something, like make it something that people are encouraged to do, so it's not just full of the people who've been playing the game for 10 years and like are pros and want to do it all the time.
mm. Yeah, but again, it's a hard thing to design around, right? Like maybe you keep track of how many times has a player played this game and restarted their save file.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
again, we're getting arbitrary and wild here, right?
yeah. At a certain point, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to speak about like multiplayer in general, it took me a long while to get my head around it and all that. So I didn't like it at first because it felt so inscrutable. But once I was into it, it's a very fun premise. Like we've already talked about invading and the orange soapstones, which like
Mm,
are both, at least for me, very fresh takes on multiplayer.
mm,
And summoning as well is not as unique, but like a very fun implementation of a very unique style of multiplayer where you summon someone in to help you, and you both get perks for that.
yeah.
I think it's really actually accelerated by the fact that you can summon NPCs as well. I
Yeah.
wish the game had taught me this so that I could have done it before like 3/4 of the way in.
Hmm.
But like in my new game plus game, I summoned some people to help me fight the gargoyles, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the summoning is a real highlight, and I love the way something that I think Dark Souls does very well in this instance is unifies a very like gamey system like multiplayer into something that is completely consistent with the lore of the world, right? The fact that it's kind of these like ghosts of other heroes or alternate dimensions or whatever, I think it just works very well with thematically within the game, and I think
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
yeah. Like I love everything about the multiplayer in this. It yeah, as I said, took me so long to get into it, but yeah, I think if the game did a better job of coaching you, that NPCs could join you and then saying, "Hey," and so can other players.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I just was really impressed.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
the fight club we had will go down as one of the highlights of the game club for me. Like
That was a very fun time.
we got together with a bunch of people on the Doof Discord and did a fight club, and it was so much fun.
Yeah, it
Piece of
was
shit.
really genuinely very fun.
Why didn't I pull out the clip of me beating you in our first battle? Should have done that.
Well, I didn't include those deaths in my death counter explicitly because I don't know if it's legit, you know?
I
Like,
don't. Yeah, PvP deaths don't count. Yeah.
um, for those, just to contextualize, when I
I beat
first
Ruben
went to
fair and square. I
PvP,
beat Ruben fair and square. Anyway,
yeah, beat me
next
fair
point.
and square. Fair and square. I don't think you hit me a single time, Elliot. Just Dawn came out and shot me with a lightning bolt or whatever.
Yeah, so the way it worked is I got Dawn and Bishop to. I summoned them before Ruben invaded me for our one-on-one, and they hid around the corner. And then the second we started fighting, they just came and like shot him in the back, and it was great.
Mm,
Um,
good times.
yeah. Also, last point I want to talk about here, in the experimental nature. I know New Game Plus was hardly a new concept,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't think of anywhere else better to talk about this. The New Game Plus in this game is very odd. I don't understand what it is for.
Yeah.
Because
I hated how it forces you straight into New Game Plus after you beat the boss.
oh,
That's
yeah,
just frustrating.
yeah, that's annoying. Um,
Um,
but also like okay, so it's got the inverse difficulty curve because I think I've already touched on it. I think Dark Souls gets progressively easier as you play, or at
yes.
least it did for me.
Yeah, no, for me as well.
New Game Plus is really odd because I played about half of the game in New Game Plus and it was extremely easy because you know what you're doing. The enemies aren't actually that much more powerful, but there's no room for me to grow. Like I already had my level 15 weapon. I already like
Yeah,
pretty maxed out in strength and dex. Like
yeah.
so
The
I was kind
stats actually do hard max out after a
yeah.
certain point as well. So it's kind of like,
Well, it's just
okay,
diminishing returns as well. Like the fact that I'm already at my level 15 weapon, that's about where 90% of the improvement came from, not my strength stat.
yeah,
So yeah, like for me, I'm just like looking at New Game Plus, and I'm like, all this does is kind of reverse the difficulty curve. Like the back half of the game must be really hard in New Game Plus because I'm not getting any stronger.
yeah,
Um, but it's also just weird because the enemies are tougher. You can't change your playstyle. Like my initial impression going into it was, oh, now I can make my swordsman also a sorcerer. This will be
yeah.
fun. And then I got my first bit of sorcery, and it does like 2 damage because I've got New Game Plus
You've got
scaled
like
enemies.
2 faith or whatever it is. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and just because even if I level it up, it's like I'm at that problem because I'm the New Game Plus scaled damage is just nothing anymore.
mm,
So it's like if I actually want to try playing a sorcerer, I just have to start again. So I'm just here like, well, what's the point of New Game Plus then?
mm, yeah. No point. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I saw it. I was like, oh, I'm back here again. Okay, this is New Game Plus. All right, I'm done. Like, whatever. No, I had no desire to completely start again and have to fight every single thing again, except now it just takes longer and everything has more health and stats, which is
Yeah.
definitely the impression that I got.
So it's been the opposite. Like I got up to I think I'm just about to enter Sen's Fortress
Oh,
in,
really?
in
You
in my
went
New
quite
Game
far.
Plus, and it took me about an hour to get there. Like it's
Oh,
just
wow.
like I was destroying bosses. The Capra demon took maybe 8 hits. Like
Damn.
it's very differently balanced. But that's the thing. I'm not growing any stronger in New Game Plus. Like it took me an hour, and I've maybe gained about 8 damage that I'm doing. So it's kind of like by the time I get to the late game bosses, it's going to completely flip.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, interesting. Sounds not very fun to me.
Bishop brings up an interesting point, and this is partially why I'm so excited for Sekiro.
Mm,
It has no classes or stat systems, which is like I hate classes and I hate stat systems. So I'm very interested in Sekiro. I think instead, as you level up, you spec into abilities. So like certain finishing moves and that sort of thing, which is much more my style.
mm, mm, yeah. Yep, I can vibe with that. Um, yeah, John also points out that Dark Souls 2 has a more robust New Game Plus, which adds new content, which is good. And like,
Yeah.
I guess it's like that's what I would have wanted to see in this. And yes, this game obviously had things that they had to cut due to scope, surely. But then just don't. I mean, why have it? You know, like I don't know.
Yeah.
Let you just start a new game if you want to start a new
Yeah,
game.
that's the thing. I played a bit of New Game Plus, and I was like, I feel like this game wants me to just start a new game instead.
Yeah.
But anyway, so moving on to our next slide.
I mean, we've been talking. The next thing, again, is we were just going to talk about the obtuse mechanics of this game, but we've kind of been talking about it the entire time.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true.
Oh, this is a fun.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where you are. Oh, this is to fight the.
Yes. Wee. Yep. Nope.
So is that what happens if you're not
Um,
wearing the ring?
yes. Took me about, I think, 15 minutes probably in this area to get through here. So, and I think I only did because people told me the answer. And I found a orange soapstone that says try ring, and then another one that says try jump. I mean, like, just silly, just obtuse. Don't think this is very good. I was even reading the item descriptions. I read the description for that ring and was like, maybe this is it. Maybe I have to wear this, and kept trying other things because it didn't really even seem that correct to me. I mean, I don't know. Just
Yeah.
obtuse.
I agree. I just have mixed feelings on the obtuseness because, as we said, like this was a game that sort of came out when games handheld you a bit much, uh, and there's just maybe a bit of overcorrection here. There's also
Yeah.
it's clear a lot of other people enjoy this whole story told through deep NPC conversation and item descriptions, and I don't. So
I mean, I find that fine normally. I I don't know. Obviously, during Game Club, Elliot, it's a bit of a meme that you don't read anything, right? Like, fine,
yeah,
that's funny. I I feel like I read about as much as a normal player would be expected to. I mean, I talked to every single NPC. I didn't hurt any NPC. I read about. I think I read all of my ring descriptions. I didn't read all my weapon descriptions, but I read a lot of stuff. And even so, everything was still so nonsensical to me. Like,
yeah. Well,
it's just
our next
yeah.
slide's on the story, so maybe we should save a bit of this.
Wait, okay, before we get to that, I want to play a little fun pop quiz, Elliot, while we're talking about capital letters obtuseness.
Okay.
I want to know how many of the stats you actually know what they do.
Oh God.
How well do you
Can
think
you
you're going to do in this game?
are you going to tell me what the stats are?
Well, that's the slightly easier mode. Do you want to name as many of the? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stats. I'll tell you now. There was also 2 lists on the wiki that are level and humanity. They're not stats. I'm just chucking them away. But apart from those, there are 8 stats. Do you want to name all the stats?
God. Okay. There's endurance.
Yes, that's one of them. Do you want to tell me what endurance does?
Is that the one that gives you more stamina?
That's one of the 3 things that it does on the wiki. Yes. Do you want to tell me the other 2?
I think it increases the damage you do a little bit.
In fact, that is one of the few stats that doesn't have an impact on damage, from what I can tell. So no, incorrect.
So it does 2 other things.
It does, yes.
Oh, it lets you
So
carry
one
more
is
stuff.
your
It lets
stamina.
you, it lets you,
Yes,
wait,
that's the second thing.
yeah.
The third one I didn't know, so it's going to be a hard one to get.
Okay, poise. Does it affect your poise?
No, it doesn't. It gives you more resistance to bleeding, apparently. Who would have known?
Sure.
Oh, and you said it gives you more stamina. That's true up until level 40,
Yes.
at which point it doesn't give you more stamina, apparently. So that's fun.
Mine's sitting at level 40 right now. Okay,
Okay, so that's one of the 8 stats.
Jesus. So strength is the other one just strength?
Strength is one of them. Yep. What does that one do, Elliot?
Increases the amount of damage you do with your weapon.
Yes. Now, I'm pretty sure it increases your damage in 2 ways. One, it just increases your damage by default, and 2, it like scales your damage for some weapons. It's a little confusing.
Well, endurance
there's
does
also
that for some weapons too, I think.
I don't think it does, from what I can tell.
Okay.
It's hard to understand, and I'm looking at the wiki right now, and I still don't understand it.
Is that all?
Apparently, it doesn't have any base damage buff. So no, it only increases your damage based on weapons that scale with strength.
Yeah. Mostly, it lets you carry weapons, right, or wield them. Like that's the
Uh,
only time I was intentionally getting strength was for that.
so again, not really. Yes, but uh, almost every stat, except for some, have a for some weapons, like control whether you can equip them or not. So again, that's not really something that is unique to strength at all.
Okay.
Okay, so you've got strength and endurance.
There's faith.
There's faith. Yep, nice. What does that one do, Elliot?
I think it lets you learn spells.
No, not really. Some spells, similar to weapons, have a minimum amount of faith that you can have to equip them. Um, so kind of, but kind of true.
Okay.
There's some other things that it does. I think it does two other things. Well, yeah, two other things. I guess.
I don't know what they are.
So one is it increases your magical defense, apparently, and the other is that it increases the damage that your miracles do. Okay, your 3 out of 8 stats, Elliot.
Yeah. So again, the things like magical, fire, and electrical defense were things I never really had to worry about. I think
Yeah,
maybe the
me
game
neither.
didn't need them personally, but
Do you
I'm
know what stats gives you more of those? Ooh.
intelligence.
Not wrong. It's resistance, I think, which also gives you like poison resistance. That's
Yeah.
fun.
See,
The other, I'm gonna
poison. Sorry,
shortcut here for you. Oh
poison
yeah.
and bleeding makes sense to me. I just don't. Yeah, I guess I'm very anti stats in games. Like I don't like that. So like I just like the fact that I was able to for 99% of the game ignore almost all the resistances for like elements. I was like, you probably just don't need this in your game then.
Mm. I mean, yeah, totally. There's a stat called attunement, which seems to just give you spell slots, but you have to level it up like 2 or 3 times before it will give you another spell slot, which again, just
So
ridiculous.
that's what I thought faith was.
No,
Um,
no, that's
is
a different one.
is vitality one of them?
Vitality just gives you health, I think, nothing else.
Huh.
So that's a nice simple stat, which is good. Then there's dexterity, which gives you more damage for weapons that have dexterity. And also, I'm finding out now, increases the casting speed of your spells. Didn't know that. That's fun. And then intelligence is like sorceries, damage, and requirements for sorceries.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, this could be like 3 stats. They could simplify this down to maybe 3 stats, and I think it would be fine.
Yeah, like honestly, the only other game I've played with stat stuff like this is Pokemon, and in Pokemon, I never had to give a shit about the stats.
Yeah, you can just ignore it there, right? Yeah.
So I found that very like this is why I want to play Sekiro because I found it like in this game just having to worry about these numbers and the effects of things, and if you didn't do a good build, the game was impossible. I basically just offloaded designing my build to the audience because I wasn't capable of it.
Yeah, no, totally. In chat right now, people are telling me I got something wrong about the stats. I mean, I was literally just reading stuff off the wiki page. So if I was misinterpreting things and it's literally being explained to me on the screen, I think that's even further evidence that these stats are just so obtuse.
They remind me, like I haven't really ever played D&D, but they remind me of the D&D ones, and I never understood those.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like the D&D stats are much easier in contrast.
But like I've never had to worry. Like like in all the RPGs I've played, it's usually you who's DMing, and I just do like, what do I roll?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've again never had to worry.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we've covered everything else we wanted to talk about in the obtuseness of this game.
There's one other part about the obtuseness.
Okay.
I guess. I mean, like, do we want to touch on the story a bit more?
Oh, that's
I
the
still
next
don't
slide.
understand what it is.
That's the next slide.
Oh yeah, but the heading for this slide is also obtuseness.
No, this slide is the obtuseness of Dark Souls mechanically. The next one is the obtuseness of Dark Souls narratively.
Yes, sorry. Yes, okay.
So one last thing I do want to mention, like for me, we've talked a lot about Stockholm Syndrome in terms of this game with the Discord. And I do think that is a part of what we all love about it because I feel like the start of this game is so brutal, both in terms of the combat and in terms of you have to like learn the mechanics because the game won't teach you. But I almost think that as you start to learn this game, it loses some of its appeal because you actually know what you're doing, and there's like, I think there's almost a weird chasing the dragon effect that goes on where people are like looking for another hit of that like not knowing what's going on and having to learn the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you get so many crazy challenge runs. Like you were saying, your friend does all these weird challenge runs, and it's because like
Yeah.
you're imposing difficulty on yourself because you're trying to recapture what it was like the first time you played.
Yeah. I guess that speaks to the fact that it is a rewarding experience to overcome this challenge, right?
Yeah,
Uh, I and obviously that's the thesis behind it, right? Is you should you should feel this reward when you beat a tough challenge. That's like Dark Souls 101, right? But I don't know. I mean, like shit, man, just falls over so many times in that.
yes. So now, yeah, let's get on to a final chunk of content for this: the story.
Okay, so I know chat's talking about the story now. Don't look at that, Elliot.
Yeah,
Um, what do you think the story of this game is?
I had Dawn explain it to me after I
Oh, so you
finished.
actually know.
Well, Dawn tried to explain it to me.
Right.
Whether I was a good receptive host to that knowledge,
Yeah.
we can be the judge of that. So, okay, basically, before the game, there were dragons,
Sure.
and then I think everyone killed the dragons,
Yeah, and
and that
of
made the
course
world
there are
hurt.
still dragons in the game though, but they're just not called dragons, which again adds to the
Well,
confusingness of
don't worry
it.
about that. Don't worry about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Anyway, they killed all the dragons, and this was bad because it started to put the fire of the world out or something. So
Okay.
then the final boss, whose name I've forgotten, figured out.
Gwyn.
Yes. So Gwyn figured out that they could like put their soul in this special thing, and it would massively extend how long the world would not die anymore. But then Gwyn started to die, and so the main character is chosen as Gwyn's successor. And so then you basically go through all this shit, and you're getting yourself strong enough so that you can like sit there in torture for a couple of 100,000 years until the next person gets
Oh,
chosen.
so that's the end of the game. Is you replace Gwyn?
Yeah, you know how you like got lit on fire and the camera zoomed out? Yeah, you're becoming the
Yeah.
next Gwyn.
Oh, okay.
You you can choose to leave apparently, and this is the thing that it's like, yeah,
Okay.
which is like again, I would take issue with this because everyone's like, oh, that's the second ending or the other choice ending. It's like it's not a choice because you beat a
Yeah.
boss and there's a bonfire there. Of course, you're going to go up and rest that.
Yeah.
That's what the game's
I
been
mean,
training you to do.
the past four bosses have been you beat a boss and then there's a
Yeah.
bonfire behind it. Each of the Lord Soul bosses is that exact thing. So of course you would just do the thing that you've done four times before then. I don't
Um,
know what.
the only clue that I'm aware of that I think is reasonable for you to learn there is a second ending is that there's an achievement for getting the other ending.
I mean, I don't know if
But
that's reasonable. I don't look at achievements before I play a game.
that's fine. Oh, I'm talking about like after. Like I'm not saying you
Yeah,
get it the
sure.
first time, but
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
even the second time, because Dawn was like, "Oh no, no, see, the alternative ending is actually explained to you by you know the snake guy that takes you to the water
Yeah,
vessel. There's
yeah,
actually a
yeah.
second snake, and if you meet a very specific set of requirements, you can find the second snake where you kill the four kings. He's only
Oh,
there for a
what?
very brief window of the game, and you need to do all this crazy shit to meet him, but he's there, and he tells you to leave and not do it. And it's like that's how you're meant to find, but it's like it's John was explaining to me, and I was like, this is so convoluted. Like, the only reason you'd know to look for it is this achievement that's like, get the sad ending.
Yeah.
Um,
Huh.
but yeah, yeah. So anyway, so the ending's meant to be you sort of either take this choice of extending the suffering of the world as it is
Yeah.
currently,
Yeah.
or like let the world get snuffed out. And I think you become like the new Dark Soul. I guess that's where the name comes in.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and you, yeah, so you leave it, and then you become like some evil overlord of the darkness.
Cool. So there's two bad endings. There's no good ending, I guess. That's
Yeah,
fun.
I mean it's very Dark
Um,
Souls. What jumped
I
out
mean,
to me is so it's a bit of a thing, and this came up on the Discord. The final boss in this game is kind of stupidly easy, right?
yes. Oh, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Well, what if I try parrying it and then I parried it and then I killed it? And I was like, oh, okay, cool, easy.
um. So okay, hear me out. If you're gonna have a final boss that's not like mega tough and has multiple forms or whatever, anyway, and you've got this ending that's based on you choosing to stay and become the next person, and you've
Hmm.
got inbuilt lore that's like there's multiple worlds and there are other players. What if the final boss was the last person to beat the final boss?
Mm.
So like you take a player's character model and their like kit when they beat the final boss, and that becomes the next final boss for whoever
Mm.
plays it next online.
Would have been cooler, definitely.
And then if somebody chooses to leave, the next person just gets no final boss.
See, that's fun. That's fun.
Um, I just feel like all these building blocks were there, and like I learned about this ending, and I was like, it would have been so much cooler if it was like I could have fought Ruben as the final boss if I finished after him.
Yeah, and narratively, I think it makes as much sense as this final boss.
Yeah, yeah. If the concept is you're replacing the previous person, I think it still works.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, would have been cool. I think the narrative stuff in Dark Souls that worked for me is the much smaller level stuff, right? Um, like the bit where the wolf that you fight in the garden when you go into the DLC is there, and also you're fighting their boss, their whatever, their master. And I was like, okay, that works for me. That's a cool bit of like environmental storytelling that works on me because it's like a small human level thing and it's easy to put together and it all kind of makes sense, right?
yeah, yeah.
Or I think you mentioned the stuff with Soler didn't work for you because you had no attachment to him, but I had an attachment to Soler because he helped me kill a boss. Or like the guy who's in the big round suit of armor and he keeps showing up every so often, and then his daughter shows up looking for him. I'm like, okay, all these things worked on me because they're small level, like emergent stories. Whereas the main story of Dark Souls, I had absolutely no care for because it just was nothing. There was just nothing there
Yeah.
to
Well,
me.
it's told through item descriptions, which is just not things I'm inclined to read.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's interesting though because this brought up something to me. Like two of the games I point out as these are my favorite laws in video games, like my favorite worlds, are
Hmm.
Pikmin and Splatoon.
Hmm.
And they both have a very similar formula, which is
Yes.
they've got quite a simple story presented on the surface, and then if you dig into the lore surrounding collectibles and extra stuff, you get this really dark undertone. And
Yeah.
not that every game need like obviously I'm a huge fan of the aesthetic of like cutesy overtone with like dark undertone. You don't need
Yeah.
that. Like Dark Souls could be dark on top and on bottom. But I
Yeah.
think I've learned what I need is that simple version of the story presented to me to get me engaged in the darker and deeper stuff.
Yeah. I guess the simple version of the story in Dark Souls is ring bells, collect souls to unlock something, and then
Yeah.
go kill this one person. And like that's maybe like 30% of what it needed to be. It just needed to give you some reason for actually doing that. And it would have been a
Yeah.
good, simple story, I think.
Yeah, like I think I just need that extra bit of layout given to me to encourage me to want to know more. Like you need to explain the basics so that the later stuff has something to actually challenge. Whereas like when I pick up my first few rings or chat to my first few NPCs and they start just saying fantasy words I don't know what they mean, I just
Mm,
tune out and I like stop engaging.
mm.
And that was what happened with me in Dark Souls. Like the first few bits that I read, I was like, I don't know what this means, and so I gave up.
Yeah, it
Um,
throws too much at you at once. Like, here's something. It at the start of the game, it says it has this little cutscene, and it says something like, "Oh, all the undead are corralled to the north," and you're at the north in the asylum, and so I'm. You think you're undead, but then you can also become not undead, and that's the exact kind of thing where it's like I never really understood what it meant to be because I have agency and I can be a zombie, but I also can sometimes not be a zombie.
yeah, what
But
makes me
sometimes there are
different?
people who are 100% zombies, and sometimes people who weren't zombies turn into zombies, and I just didn't understand what that meant, right? Like it just doesn't. At no point does the distinction between like what's an undead, what's a person, what's all this stuff.
What's
At no
hollowing?
point did that make sense. Yeah,
Like
right.
reverse hollowing, I still don't understand what that means. I understand mechanically what it means, but I don't like in law understand what hollowing is at all. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I just like yeah, I looked at Splatoon because for me I was sort of like, um, like Splatoon is a game where I spent ages reading all of the collectible scrolls that I got. Why didn't I want to do that in Dark Souls? And for me, it was because the scrolls enhanced what was already given to me, and
Mm.
whereas Dark Souls when I picked things up, they were just they just didn't make sense to me. So yeah, like Splatoon presents a very simple narrative of, oh, these Octolings stole our Zapfish, we need to go get it. And then you start reading the scrolls and you learn that you're committing genocide and you're actually the bad guys. And I find that really fun.
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff.
I just obviously need that base layer to start playing with first.
Yeah, you need a hook to get you invested, right? Yeah. Dark Souls assumes that you'll get invested and doesn't care about getting you invested in the game, you know?
Yeah. Cool. Well, I suppose before we move on to the exciting announcement we're sort of going to finish with.
Yep.
Q&A time. So
yeah,
I haven't managed to keep up with the chat as much as I usually like to, because you're all talking about other games and stuff that I don't understand. But yeah, I don't know. What are people's thoughts that they want to project onto the rest of the stream?
Yeah. Anyone got any questions on stuff that we haven't talked about? Anyone want to hear what our thoughts on obtuse game design is?
I feel like we've covered that.
No, we could hit it a bit more. We've only talked about it for 2 hours. I think we could talk about it a bit more.
Yeah, I do feel like I like we said this going into it, but like I really struggled to have like a structure to today. I feel like we went back and forth. I don't feel like we were as structured as I'd like.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Least favorite mob and why is it the wheel skeletons? I didn't mind the wheel skeletons. They were fine.
Yeah, I didn't mind them either. They were fine.
They were a bit annoying in the painted world, but that was the first place I found them, and I was quite underleveled.
You know, my least favorite mob, I think, was the imps in New Londo at the castle. You know what I'm talking about? They're like kind of big white winged imp things. I think they might also be the creatures that take you to Anor Londo.
The harpies in the painted world?
No, not them. They're like Kalsubalu's calling them bat demons. You know, there's the part where you're walking along like the ramparts of castles in Anor Londo. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there's those like fat chunky gargoyle boys.
Yes.
And they shoot lightning at you.
Do
they? Or
wait,
am I thinking
are
of the
they
Valley of the
the
Drakes? They're quite similar to the Drakes from the Valley of the Drakes. Like
they are, but they don't shoot lightning.
No,
they just kind of jump at you with their claws. I found them really annoying to deal with.
Geez, I think my least favorite mob would have been the snakes in Sense Fortress. Especially if you just look statistically at who I died to the most easily. Those snakes.
Yeah, they're annoying, aren't they? Yeah. I liked fighting the bigger mobs, like the stone statues in the Darkroot Garden or Darkroot Basin. They were fun. Like, I liked bigger mobs. I think they were more fun to deal with.
I disagree. I like the little ones.
Well,
what was your favorite area of the game? That one's coming from John.
That's a hard question. Maybe Sens. I think Sens was really fun.
God. Strong disagree. I was too low level to take that place on what I did.
Yeah, fair. I think because just the Sens is so densely packed with stuff to do, you know? Like there's always like a trick or a trap around every corner, and I found that really fun.
I agree. I think if I'd been in a better zone for it, I would have really enjoyed it because it's such an interconnected little standalone map as well.
Yes.
It's a fantastic labyrinth.
Yeah.
I was just frustrated and stressed the whole time I was there, so I didn't manage to enjoy it.
Yeah.
For me, my favorite place was the Tomb of the Giants, the really dark place.
I don't understand how you can think that was your favorite place.
I think it was the coolest design part because you had to carry the lantern.
That was cool. The bone dogs, I hated the bone dogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. By the time I got there, there were like 2 or 3 hits to kill.
Oh my god. Okay. I mean, I guess it's just dependent on when you find areas, right?
Yeah.
And that's why we can have such different experiences, because if I go to this place and level up, I find a later place really easy and you found it hard or whatever. Like,
yeah, that was what I talked about. Like Hollow Knight sort of sidestepped that problem by having each area focus on different parts of the game.
Yes. Yeah. What are your thoughts on interconnected map design, Elliot? We kind of touched on this a bit. The map in the first part of the game is so beautifully designed.
Yeah. I would continue to play Soulsborne games if they were designed like this. I hear that they're quite not quite. I played a bit of Bloodborne, and Bloodborne really, in my opinion, shot itself in the foot in its map design, um, by not having anywhere near enough bonfires.
Mm,
Uh, but in general, I kind of liked the idea of its levels. I just think it just needed more bonfires. Bloodborne.
mm,
Bloodborne had
mm.
this weird problem where I would like beat enemies, and it would be like it felt like an achievement. I constantly went through this loop in Bloodborne of beating a bunch of enemies and thinking, holy shit, that was like so fulfilling. I love this game. Then I would die, get sent back, and every single one of them respawns, and then I just have to run past them. Like, you know those werewolves? You saw me try to fight the werewolves a few
Yeah, yeah,
times.
yeah.
They respawn every time you go to a bonfire.
Oh, so they're just a normal
Yeah.
enemy.
So I was so proud of myself the first time I killed both of them, and then the next time I went there, they were just back, and you just meant to run past them. And I was like, I get no fulfillment out of running past enemies that I killed before. Like,
What, you don't like running past enemies, Elliot?
no, I
Why are
don't.
you playing these games then?
Well, yeah, no, I don't think I will be. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's the next question we have here?
What do you think about the theory that Gwyn is an intentionally easy boss because the point in is his extension on his life is so unnatural a breeze can topple him over? I think that's cool in theory, but makes for a bad final boss.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, again, if I had engaged in the story with a way that maybe would have made that a theory I could come up with, it'd be cool. But as it was, like, I got to the final boss, I was so hyped, I killed it, and I was like, okay, bring on the second form, and the game just ended.
Mm,
I still, honestly, I prefer my idea of you fight the previous person who won the game, or maybe no one if they skipped it.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, fighting the Gwyn was basically fighting no one, so it's at least it's only could be an improvement.
Yeah, Gwyn was like a worse version of Artorias as a fight, I think.
I know. I know. God. Just not as fun of a fight as Artorias, or as challenging, or anything, or as like thematically fun. Yeah. Um, if you can make one change to Dark Souls, Elliot, what would it be?
Oh, like, honestly, story for me isn't hugely important in games. I'd be fine to leave the story where it is.
Yep.
As much as I'd love to do what I was talking about and give it that one layer that's actually presented to you, um, I would much rather remove all the stats. Like,
Yeah, that's a fun
I,
one.
I'd take out the leveling system as it exists and probably turn it into what it sounds like Sekiro is. So I just need to play Sekiro.
Yeah, I mean the real thing that happens in Dark Souls is you get better at learning moves and learning what your capabilities are anyway. So
Mm.
I could even see removing stats completely, and the game would, one, be easier to balance because you wouldn't have to worry about different stat levels, but two, you wouldn't have to worry about different, I don't know, like different strengths in different areas, and it would require you to design things that were a bit more intentionally tricky. I mean, like, maybe you say you can get up to like 10 uh darks. You can get up, okay, you can get up to 10. We'll call the item Dark Souls. You can get up to 10 of them, and at a bonfire you can invest them into different stats, right? So you find them around the world, and you can have up to 10, and you can put them all into strength. You can put 5 into strength, 5 into dexterity. You're not leveling up, you're getting this item that you can like imbue into your different stat areas, so you can mix them up on the fly as much as you want, and you don't have to worry about a huge amount of stats to deal with.
Yeah, being able to respec would have been huge for me not wanting
Yeah.
to take this out of the game. I also, yeah,
Yeah.
again, like, to go a bit broader, take all the stats out and just keep the weapons with stats and just turn it into Breath of the Wild's breakable weapon system.
Yeah.
Because that way you can just have the weapons scale for areas.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So true. There's you can get like crystal weapons in the game. I found a crystal halberd once, but they break so quickly that you can only use it for a little bit of time. Maybe if all the weapons were crystal weapons,
Yeah.
they'd all do a bit more damage, but they'd break. And I'd be like, okay, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Only crystal weapons. Easy.
I'm just a huge fan of Breath of the Wild's breakable weapons, so I
Yeah.
feel like I just want to put that in all the other games.
Yeah.
The music doesn't get a lot of attention. What are our thoughts on the music?
I think there was one or two times where I noticed a song and I was like, oh shit, this is a really good song. I'm really into it. I think it was in the DLC as well. I actually don't think I noticed the music other than that.
Yeah, which is like, good. Like, because
Maybe good, maybe bad. I don't know.
I don't
Yeah.
think it was exceptionally good. Like, some of the games we played, like I listened to Hollow Knight,
Yeah.
Transistor, and Outer
Fucking Hollow
Wilds'
Knight. Yeah.
soundtracks.
The music
Really,
was the best thing in Transistor,
yeah.
for sure.
Um, I would say, whereas like some games have bad music. Like some games have music where I'm like, I mute it so that I can listen to something else. Dark Souls was not that. Dark Souls was
Yeah.
exactly what you want from background music, whereas somebody's asking me about it, and I'm like, wait, what was the music like?
Yeah, exactly. It was fine, I'm sure.
Yeah.
What else? Got any other questions in here? What do you think about how the game doesn't allow you to go back to old saves? That was a pretty unheard of mechanic.
Yeah, I think it's important if you're pairing it with the idea that you can lose the souls.
Yes.
Like that was innovative
Yes.
for this game because there are definitely a handful of times where I would have saved scummed for sure.
Oh, really?
If I had the chance. Yeah, it took me most of this game because this was a lesson I didn't have to learn in Hollow Knight. I only lost my souls in Hollow Knight like twice, and they
Mm,
both one was a moderate amount and one was low, and they still really pissed me off.
right.
So it took me most of this game to get comfortable with the idea of losing souls. Um, and if I was able to save scum, I never would have had that. In fact, I think I did save scum once or twice in Hollow Knight. So
Mm,
yeah,
mm. You know what else Hollow Knight did better than Dark Souls? Talking about final bosses. At the final boss of Hollow Knight, halfway through, it starts attacking itself, and immediately you're like, "Oh shit, something's going on that
yeah,
I need to pay attention to." If they'd done that in Dark Souls, it would have been awesome. It would really help to sell the ending. Did do it. That's fine. Whatever. Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is just a better version of Dark Souls, isn't it? Mm. Um, what else should we touch on? Uh, well, Kalsubalu has said, "What design lessons do you think you'd take from this to apply to another game?" I mean, like, it's obviously done some really interesting things, and I think people have taken those design lessons, right? Like, Hollow Knight is obviously the example we keep coming back to.
yeah. Well, I think, and I again, like it was obviously it's easy to come back to it because it's a game we played in the game club, so it's like
Yeah,
easy to say to everyone.
yeah.
Um, but it's also it's weird playing Dark Souls after playing Hollow Knight like we're doing because I think Hollow Knight is one of the games that took some of the strengths of it and applied it to another genre that is similar and that I love. So it's almost like I can't say there are many things I want to take from Dark Souls and put in other games because they're the things Hollow Knight already took from it and put in a game.
You know what system Hollow Knight didn't take that I think is one that I really love?
Yeah,
Um, the orange soapstones. I honestly, that to me is one of the things where I'm like, this is just such a cool system.
yeah,
I just love the idea, and I've made some games that have somewhat similar elements to that in the sense of like very streamlined weaving of other players' messages into your game. But I just think it's such a cool.
yeah.
It's just such a cool mechanic.
I mean, it definitely depends on the player base and how you organize them. Because I mean, have you ever turned comments on in Mario Maker? Like,
I mean, yeah, I
like
guess.
just as an example of how it can go wrong. Like, I think the orange soapstones deserve props for how well they work.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like
Presumably the rating system is the thing behind that, but I never really interacted with it that much.
no, same. I tried to rate one and couldn't figure it out. But yeah, like Mario Maker and some of the other like like me era Nintendo stuff is just the exact opposite of this, where like it would turn me off doing this as an idea.
I guess it's because in Dark Souls, you only get it to pick from a set of messages, right? Seemingly. Um, so the most that people can do is put one where it's not meant to be, or put a memey one. Like I got one that said "chest ahead" when I was about to talk to the illusion girl in Alon Londo,
Yeah.
which is very funny. And thumbs up to whoever came up with that. But it doesn't let you do anything that's just nonsense or like a slur or whatever, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, again, like the Mario Maker comments, you can either draw stuff, which are the messy ones, but there's also like certain words and stickers, and those ones are usually the worst because people just spam them. I think it really comes down to the community here. Like Mario
Mm,
Maker's community is just a lot more full of trash people. Um,
mm,
so you just end up with like a different proportion. Like it's about the player base that the game cultivated.
mm, yeah. Yeah, probably true. I mean, it's not a welcoming game, so you kind of have to have passed at least an age gate before you can
But yeah,
get in.
exactly. Like, Mario Maker is just as welcoming to a 5-year-old as it is to a 30-year-old. So you've
Yes.
got to account for that when you're talking about the community demographic.
Yeah. Um, yeah, cool. Any other questions anyone has? Pop them in chat.
So here's one for you, Robin.
Yeah, hit me.
Which Dark Souls would you, or which Soulsborne game do you want to play next?
I mean, you're talking up Sekiro. It sounds pretty good to me. I definitely think. I mean, I'm probably not going to go and play all of them, but if I'm going to play one, I'm going to pick one of the later ones because I just think what Dark Souls needs is, some sequels to let it gestate and have better ideas in it, right?
Yeah.
Which obviously has happened.
Although, yeah, it was funny, like playing the 2 hours of Bloodborne for me was meant to see, like, okay, so where did they take these ideas?
mm,
And it varies in each game. So, like, I don't want to read too much into it, but Bloodborne, again, it was just like half of these decisions I don't agree with, and the other half
yeah,
were better. Like, combat, hugely better. The fact that I constantly just had to redo the same areas over and over again drove me insane.
yeah, I'd probably jump to Dark Souls 3 and then Sekiro probably sounds pretty good. So
Yeah. I'm
why
keen to
not?
learn more about this Elden Ring game and see where that goes. So that's their next one, but it's being
Mm.
written by George R. R. Martin.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, then it's never going to come out,
I mean that is
obviously.
a thing. It already has been delayed and there's like no information about it. So you're not wrong. Um but when more information about it is available, I'm actually going to follow it. Whereas before I wouldn't have. Like 2 months ago, I would have been like, "Oh, George R.
Oh,
R. Martin teams up with Dark Souls? No thanks."
Elden Ring won most anticipated game at the Game Awards.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's probably going to come out a
It's never
couple of
going to come
weeks
out.
after Winds of Winter is
Well,
published.
it's going to come out. It's going to come out after they announce that George R. R. Martin has moved on due to creative differences. Then it will come out.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, Sekiro. Like, I think especially I got especially hyped for Sekiro after the latest Girlfriend reviews, which
oh yeah,
like Shelby just basically listed my 4 biggest problems with Dark Souls and talked about how Sekiro didn't have them,
that's great.
and I was like, okay, I'm listening.
Nothing could get you more hyped for a game.
uh, John has asked Dark Souls 2 Game Club when. I don't think Dark Souls 2 has ever been submitted through the
Yeah.
form. So,
So the way we don't usually talk about this, but because I guess we assume everyone knows. But remember, the Game Club is all the games are nominated by you guys and then voted on by you guys. So if you
yeah.
want a Dark Souls 2 Game Club,
Like,
get people to nominate it.
that said, we do take some editorial license. Like I try to make sure that we're not repeating stuff.
Yeah, but we
Um,
also the most voted things are often in the voting.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, but just like so for example, if we get like a shitload of Dark Souls 2 submissions over the next month, I probably still would hesitate to put it in the next vote because I want to give it some time between
Yeah.
these next two.
True.
Um,
True.
like we did almost 2 roguelikes in a row with FTL and Slay the Spire, and I think that was too close.
Fair enough.
So like Hades will probably appear soon, but yeah, I don't know. I get if people push back on that, I'd be willing to change it. But I like the idea of having variety in genres and tone as we
Yeah.
go.
I'd want people to nominate Sekiro. Nominate Sekiro. Do it. Why not? And then
Yeah.
I can play it. That'll give me an excuse.
Yes,
Um
if your game has already been in the vote and lost, probably not worth submitting that anytime soon.
yeah, I mean, if you've already submitted it, yes. If you can
Yeah.
get more people to submit it, then maybe we'll give it another
We
vote.
have one slot of the 5 nominees we put up that is like the second chance slot for us for
Yeah.
a game that's already lost, and if a game's still getting submissions from multiple people, we'll be more inclined to look at it for that slot.
Yep. All right. Shall we move on to our fun announcement?
Yes. So it is time for the announcement of the clubbies, the official announcement. I think we've talked about this a bit with the
Woo!
patrons. Um,
Clubbies.
so the nominations for this are about to open, probably about an hour after this finishes. We will tweet those on our Pale Reflections Twitter, and we'll post them in the Doof Discord as well. Uh,
Mhm.
But yeah, this is basically our own game awards because I don't know if you watched the main game awards, but they were shit like always.
Honestly, I was more paying attention to the announcements that were coming out of the Disney investor meeting. Those were the exciting announcements. Game Club, sorry, not Game Club, Game Awards. I had no interest. I just kind of saw, okay, what games were announced? Oh, about three of them look like cool indie titles. I'll check those out.
Yeah, I just read the summaries afterwards, but I can't stand the actual awards, and I think they always give the wrong games the awards. So we decided we'd let our community give out the right ones.
Yep.
So yeah, check our Twitter or check the Discord, and there'll be a form to submit nominees for the categories.
Hmm.
Um, and unfortunately, we don't have the categories written down on these slides because we were running a bit behind.
Yeah,
But
but we can read them out.
yes, the categories are Club Game of the Year. So this one won't require nominations. This is just going to be a list of all the games we played, and we're going to vote for which one was the best.
Hmm.
I thought we could take turns doing
Oh, sorry.
them.
You won't tell me that. Next up is Game Club Moment of the Year. So, a moment that happened presumably during one of our streams, but doesn't necessarily have to be, that was just the best moment of the year.
Yeah, what moment defined Game Club to you, basically?
Yeah.
Like, I think surely someone will have to nominate the Fight Club that we had as part of this. Like, I think, yeah.
One would hope.
The third award is going to be the Game Club MVP. So this is the award for the person who you thought was, the most valuable asset to the Game Club. So not
Community
Ruben or I,
members.
but
Yeah.
like somebody else who like helped you get through a game or helped out in some other way.
Yep. Just was a vocal advocate for a game or anything like that. Next is Game Club Missed Opportunity, which is a game that you wish had won the vote but didn't.
Yeah. Something I want to say for this award is as well when you nominate something for one of these awards, it doesn't just like you're not just going to say who or what you want to win. It's also going to be a like you will get a text field for you to make your case. And what we'll probably do is even some of the ones that don't get nominated or whatever, we'll read out particularly passionate messages.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah,
one of your
definitely.
games that you love more than anything in the world is a missed opportunity, even if it doesn't sort of win, we might like read out what you said.
Yeah, so you can use this as your soapbox to convince people to vote for it next time it
Yeah,
comes up in the missed opportunities.
exactly.
But so those are references. Obviously, those first four awards are all like Game Club specific awards. Now we've got some other general games awards, right, Elliot?
Yeah. So we're
So we
opening up
have
with you go.
Game of the Year. What was your favorite game of 2020?
And that's a game that came out in 2020.
Yeah.
For whatever definition of came out exists now with early access and all that sort of shit in the
Yep.
world. Then we also have like favorite of the year, which is that's just what's the game that you enjoyed the most this year. Didn't have to come out this year. So maybe everyone discovered a game that came out 10 years ago and you all played it, and we want to know what that is. What's the game that you
Or
enjoyed the most this year?
theoretically, some kind of multiplayer game that came out 2 years ago, but everyone only really started playing it this year and it really took off. Something like that.
Yeah, could be. Um,
Interesting.
yeah. I mean, game of the year could also go to a multiplayer game, 3D platformer, Battle Royale, came out halfway through the year.
Well, see, I was talking about Among Us
Yeah,
before,
and
but
I'm
this
talking
year,
about game of the year should be Fall Guys.
yeah, Fall Guys, yeah. And then the final category is Surprise Hit of the Year, which is a game that you didn't expect to enjoy that came out this year, but you really, really loved it.
Yeah, so for me, I'm probably going to nominate something like
Dark Souls?
I mean maybe, but like Animal Crossing would probably be one for me where I was just like I thought it was just going to be another Animal Crossing, but I got way more into that this year than I expected to.
Mm. Yeah, fair enough. Um, so what's the timeline for these, Elliot, for the
Yes.
club?
So the nominations will open in the next hour or so, and then nominations will go for a week, and then we'll kick off the voting. Again, that will be announced on Twitter and in the Discord. And
Hmm.
the voting will go till the day before the next club, and then we'll announce the winners of all the awards
Yep,
on that date.
cool. And of course, there's already been a vote that has been going for the past little while, Elliot, and that vote is what game we're going to play next.
Yes. And so in a last minute upset, our next game is Baba Is You, which is like a puzzle game where you push words around to change how the game works, is my
Yep.
understanding.
It was going to be Disco Elysium, and then the remaster of Disco Elysium got announced at the Game Awards, so everyone changed their vote.
Not quite everyone, but yeah, it got
I mean, a fair
yeah.
amount of people.
It ended up getting runner up, but I'm actually going to not put it in the runner up slot next month because basically so many people changed their votes because they want to wait for it in April. I've just moved
Yes.
it to a slot in April.
Yep.
So the thing that got third, which I think was Prey, will be next month's runner up slot.
Mhm.
But yeah. For now we're just gonna be playing Baba Is You.
Yep. Bubba is you. Cool. I'm excited to try it out. I think it'll be a ton of fun. I've heard a lot of great things about this game.
Yeah, me too. Like I really enjoy puzzle games. So like this is one of the
No,
few games that
Elliot,
we've
it's a
played in.
roguelike.
No, it's not.
No, I'm joking.
No, it's not. Yeah, no,
Ooh, almost gotcha.
along with Hollow Knight, this is one of the first ones that we played for this that was already on my list of games I want to play.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
so I'll say I think this will be a good holiday one as well because everyone can just jump in and do a few puzzles whenever they want. It's a nice and chill game.
Yeah. Cool. All right, folks. Well, that'll do us for this month.
Yeah. So we'll see you all on January 9th. Remember, so it's actually a week late, like this one was. Just because the holidays and January is a really long month, we figure we can
Yeah.
eat into January a bit to give Barbos you some more time.
Yep. Before we finish up, one other thing to say, which is I think each month the community around the game club has gotten more and more invested in the games we're playing. I think Dark Souls was again a step up in terms of
Yeah.
how much fun it was to interact with the community. So if you want to, definitely recommend checking out the game club and coming in watching streams and interacting because I think that will continue to make the game more and the game club more and more fun each month. Especially for a game like Baba Is You, where I think the fun will be chatting to chat and figuring out things, sometimes together, sometimes getting little hints from presumably Dawn about what the answer to a puzzle is. Yeah, so definitely come and check out streams and participate in the community because that's definitely part of the fun.
I would not have made it through Dark Souls without the community.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, like I think playing through it with other people doing stuff like the Fight Club, like the more we can grow this community to do more stuff like that, the better we'll all be.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being a part of the game club, and we'll see you over the course of the month and then back for the actual show next month.
Yep. See you, everybody.